Char, tagal. Once upon a time, a curious girl found a mysterious item, a mirror. It spoke when she held it. Call my name, ask a question. The girl then said, mirror, mirror, in my hand. She froze after 5 words. First, she doesn't know how to utter a question. Hi, so in case you might encounter the same fate as that curious girl and you find a grammar Nazi magic mirror, then this lesson/video is for you. So by the end of this presentation, you are expected to be able to form questions with number 1, be verbs, number 2, auxiliary verbs, and number 3, do, does, and did. In this lesson, I'd like to call Ask It Right, forming questions. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all having a good day. Introductions have been made now. Let's get into our lesson. First up, we have be verbs. First, what are these be verbs? Let's all give one example. I'll start. Am. Am is a be verb. Miss Patricia, can you give us a be verb?
Hello. Am
Yes.
I audible po, sir? Um,
Yes, we can
example
hear
of
you.
example of the verbs is.
Okay, how about you, Miss Fernando?
Hello po. Another example of be verbs is was.
Okay, so am, is, was, are, were. These are be verbs. Now let's look at this sentence on our screen. Are you Canadian? I want you to study it and let us identify each part of the sentence, beginning with the subject. Which one is the subject? Anyone? Miss Patricia, can you tell us which one is the subject? Yes, Miss Atalia.
You po, sir.
All right, you. How about the object, Miss Patricia? All right, I think she's having problems with her internet. The object is Canadian, and of course, that leaves us with the be verb, which is are. Now, based from that analysis, what do you think is the format for questions with be verbs? Miss Atalia, what do you think is the format?
Be verb plus subject plus object po, sir.
All right, so it's be verb plus subject plus object, or the rest of the sentence. Now let's take a look at the exact rule from our module. All right, so to make a question using the verb be, the verb goes before the subject. So you're right, it's be verb plus subject and then the rest of the sentence. Now let's look at this a declarative sentence, and following this format, let's turn it into an interrogative sentence. Miss Patricia, would you like to try?
Yes po, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
He was in India.
So to turn it into a question, it will be,
Are you in India?
all right, that's a question. But let's try to use the exact subject and verb that is in the sentence, although that is a correct question structurally.
Oh, okay, sir. Was he in India?
All right, so you begin with the be verb. Very good. So that's was. Actually, both sentence did begin with a be verb, are and was. And then he and you, subject, and then followed by with the rest of the sentence, a prepositional phrase in India. All right, now do you understand how questions with be verbs are formed?
Yes po.
All right, now I want us to each come up with a sentence with a be verb. I'll start. Am I good at reading? Okay, so that sentence, you begin with a be verb, am, followed by uh, the subject, I, and then good at reading the rest of the sentence. good being the complement to the subject, and at reading is a prepositional phrase. Now, Miss Patricia, could you care to give us a sentence, a question with a be verb?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
Is my shirt beautiful?
All right. So, is my shirt beautiful? That is the be verb. My shirt, the subject, and beautiful, a complement to the subject. How about you, Miss Atalia? Please give us a sentence with a question with a be verb.
Were the teachers nice?
Please again.
Were the teachers nice?
All right. From what I heard, it's were the teachers nice. Okay, so that's were, be verb, the teacher's subject, and nice again a complement. All right, so now that you seem to understand how questions with be verbs are formed, can I proceed to the next category?
Yes po.
Yes po, sir.
Okay. Okay. So our next category is auxiliary verbs. What are auxiliary verbs? Auxiliary verbs are sometimes called helping verbs, and in a sentence, they are together with a main verb. For example, I can show you the world. So that's can, the auxiliary verb, and show the main verb. Now, I'd like us to give at least two examples of auxiliary verbs. I'll begin. So that's can and could. How about you, Miss Patricia? Would you like to give us an auxiliary verb? Two auxiliary
Yes, sir.
verbs. All right,
Shall
go
and
ahead.
should. Shall and should po,
All
sir.
right. All right, Miss Atalia, your turn.
Will and would po.
All right, so shall, should, will, would, can, could, has, have, had, may, might, must. These are auxiliary verbs. Be verbs can also function as auxiliary verbs, provided that in a sentence they are present together with a main verb. For example, I am dancing. So that's am, the be verb, which is also an auxiliary verb, and dancing, the main verb. All right, now let's look at this sentence again at our screen. Has she finished work? And let us do the same thing we did last time and identify each part of the sentence. Which one is the subject? Miss Patricia.
The subject po is she.
All right, and then the object, Miss Fernando.
The object po is work.
All right, then that leaves us with the verbs auxiliary has and main verb finish. Now, based from that, what do you think is the format for questions with auxiliary verbs? Miss Patricia, how about you? What do you think?
The format po is auxiliary verb plus subject plus main verb plus object po.
All right, so let's take a look. Okay, so for questions including an auxiliary verb such as have, will, and could, the auxiliary verb goes before the subject. The main verb is then placed after the subject. And if a question has more than one auxiliary verb, only the first one is put before the subject. Now let's look at this declarative sentence below and let us turn it into a question. Keep in mind of the rule. Who would like to try to turn this one into a question? Miss Patricia, yes, please.
Should we have called ahead before coming?
I'm sorry, I got lost. Could you please repeat that?
Should we have called ahead before coming po, sir?
All right, so that's should we have called ahead before coming? Should first auxiliary verb and then subject, then have second auxiliary verb, called main verb, and then the rest of the sentence. Do you understand now how questions with auxiliary verbs are formed?
Yes
Yes
po.
po, sir.
All right, now again, let's each come up with a sentence that uses a which is an auxiliary verb. I'll start. Have I been living under a rock? So that's have, first auxiliary verb, I, subject, been, second auxiliary verb, living, main verb, and then under a rock, prepositional phrase, which is the rest of the sentence. How about you, Miss Patricia? Please give us a sentence with an auxiliary verb. Miss Fernando, would you like to go first?
Another example po is, could I have some water?
I'm sorry, again.
Could I have some water po? Yung
All right, so that's could, auxiliary verb, I, subject, have verb, and some water. The rest of the sentence. How about Miss Patricia? Can you now
Yes po, sir. Sorry po, naglag kanina. A sample sentence po is, will you marry me?
all right, so that's will, auxiliary verb, you subject, marry main verb, and me object. All right, we can finally now proceed to our third category, which is do, does, and did. Now, when do we use do, does, or did? Anyone? Miss Fernando. Oh, Miss Patricia, okay. When do we use do, does, and did?
We use do po in present tense and plural subject.
All right. Proceed.
Does po if present tense or singular object. Meanwhile, the did po is for past tense po.
All right. So we use do and does for sentences in the present. Do if the subject is plural and does if the subject is singular. Of course, with the exception of I and you, which always use do. Did, on the other hand, uh, we use for sentences in the past. All right. Now let's look at this sentence in our screen. And again, uh, identify each part. So I think the do verb is a giveaway. That's does. How about the main verb? Which one is the main verb? Miss Atalia.
work po is the main verb.
All right. And what do we notice about the main verb? It's in its what? It's in its what form? It's in its basic form. How about the subject? Which one is the subject? Miss Patricia.
The subject po is she.
All right. And then the sentence ends in a prepositional phrase. So what do you think is the format for questions with do, does, and did? Miss Fernando.
Do verb plus subject plus main verb plus prepositional phrase po, sir.
All right. So in this sentence, a prepositional phrase. So let's see. So questions without the verb be or an auxiliary verb start with do, does, or did, and have the main verb in its base form. So you're right. So it's do verb plus subject plus main verb, and then followed by the rest of the sentence. Now let's look at this sentence below and let's turn it into a question again. Who would like to try? Miss Patricia, please go ahead.
They bought a new car. The question po is, did they buy a new car?
All right. So since the sentence uses a verb in its past tense, the question word did, we will use the question word did, and then followed by the subject they, and then the basic form of the verb bought, which is buy. So did they buy a new car? Do you understand how questions with do, does, or did are formed?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, again, let us each come up with a sentence that begins with do, does, and did. I'll come up with a sentence that begins with do. Miss Patricia will come up with a sentence that begins with does, and Miss Atalia will come up with a sentence that begins with did. Is that understood?
Understood po.
All right, so I'll start. Do I make you proud? So that's the do verb do plus the subject, and then the main verb make, and then you, the object, and proud complement. Now, Miss Patricia.
Does he speak Spanish?
All right, so does he speak Spanish? So that's the do verb does followed by the subject he, verb in its basic form speak, and then Spanish. All right, how about you, Miss Atalia? Give us your sentence. I'm sorry. Um, Sorry again. It seems she's having some trouble with her internet connection. Let's get back to her sentence after our recap. So, let's first have a recap of the three rules. Miss Patricia, please read rule number 1.
To make a question using the verb be, the verb goes before the subject.
All right. For questions including number 2, for questions including an auxiliary verb such as have, will, and could, the auxiliary verb goes before the subject. The main verb is then placed after the subject. If a question has more than one auxiliary verb, only the first is put before the subject. Miss Fernando, are you now present?
Hello po, am I being heard po?
Yes, please read question number 3, then proceed with your sentence earlier.
Questions without the verb be or an auxiliary verb start with do, does or did, and have the main verb in its base
All
form.
right. Now please give us your sentence from earlier.
Did you do it?
All right, so that's did, do verb, you subject, do again main verb, and then it as the object. All right. Now do you understand how questions with be verbs, auxiliary verbs, and do verbs are formed?
Yes po.
Yes po,
All right.
sir.
So to clearly see if you really understood our topic for today, I prepared 6 declarative sentences that I would like you to turn into interrogative sentences. Only this time, there will be no subheadings to guide which rule should we follow. We will be solely basing on the sentences. Who would like to try the first one? Miss Patricia, yes, please.
I'm early. Am I early?
All right, so that's M, be verb, I, subject, and then early. Number 2, Miss Fernando.
Frida is here. Is Frida here?
Again, is, be verb, Frida, subject, and then here. Number 3, very good. Miss Patricia, go ahead.
They aren't bored. Aren't they bored?
All right, so that's aren't, be verb with a negative word. They, subject, and then bored, the rest of the sentence. Number 4, Miss Athalia.
There were snacks at the party. Were there snacks
Mm-hmm.
at the party?
All right, so that's were again, be verb, there, subject, and then snacks at the party, the remainder of the sentence. Number 5, Miss Patricia.
We should stop now. Should we stop now?
Should we stop now? So that's should, auxiliary verb, we, subject, stop, main verb, and then now. Finally, Miss Fernando, the last sentence, please.
They live in Paris. Do they live in Paris?
All right, so that's do verb. So since this sentence does not have a be verb or an auxiliary verb, we will use the do verb. So that's do, very good, followed by they, the subject, and then live, the main verb, and then in Paris. All right. So do you clearly now understand how questions are formed?
Yes, po,
Yes po.
sir.
All right. So now that you are able to form questions, any questions?
None po, sir.
All right. Well, that would be it. But I still have one more slide here. What's this? Oh, look at that. It seems like you do actually share the same fate as that curious girl. Look, a magic mirror. All right then, what are you waiting for? Go ahead, ask away. That would be all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you po, sir.
All
Thank you,
right.
sir.
You're welcome. Goodbye.
Goodbye, sir.